The morning light cut through Natasha Reynolds' studio apartment like a blade, illuminating dust motes that danced above her sleeping form. At 26, she had grown accustomed to these stolen moments of peace before Brooklyn's chaos swallowed. Another day, her phone's shrill ring shattered the silence.
Ad.
Patricia Wong flashed on the screen.
Ad.
Her boss never called this early. Natasha, thank God you're awake. Patricia's voice carried a tremor that made Natasha bolt upright. Emma was rushed to the hospital last night. Appendicitis. They're operating this afternoon. And I can't leave her side. Natasha's chest tightened. Patricia had been more than a mentor at Elegant Spaces design studio for 3 years. It was family, how can I help? The Cross Enterprises presentation. Today at 2 o'clock, I need you to handle it. The words hit like ice water. Cross Enterprises. The contract is worth millions that could make or break their small firm. Natasha had poured her soul into those designs for months. But presenting to Damian Cross himself was entirely different from sketching in her apartment. Damian Cross will be there personally, Patricia continued. He specifically requested our final presentation. This is everything, Natasha. It's everything we've worked for. After hanging up, Natasha stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark hair tumbled over her shoulders, and her mother's warm brown eyes stared back, wide with a mixture of terror and determination. She had 90 minutes to transform. From sleepy designer to the professional who would secure their future, she chose her armor carefully. A fitted navy blazer over crisp white silk paired with her favorite pencil skirt and charcoal wool that made her feel invincible. Her grandmother's pearl earrings added the finishing touch, a connection to strength that ran in her bloodline. The subway to Manhattan gave her time to review every detail of Harmony Heights, the luxury residential complex that would either launch her career or destroy it. Sustainable materials, smart home integration, spaces designed to inspire rather than merely house. Each apartment was a canvas for life's most precious moments. Cross Enterprises Tower pierced the sky like a steel and glass monument to ambition. Standing on the sidewalk, craning her neck to see the top, Natasha felt the weight of her portfolio and the dreams it contained. The lobby's polished marble reflected her image back at her, a young woman about to face the most powerful meeting of her life. Mr. Cross is expecting you, the platinum-haired receptionist said with a smile that seemed to appraise and dismiss simultaneously. Express elevator to the 38th floor. Ascent felt eternal. Through glass walls, Manhattan shrank below, while Natasha's pulse thundered in her ears. When the doors opened, the panoramic city view stole her breath. This was the level of success she dreamed of achieving. Ms. Reynolds, I'm Jessica, Mr. Cross's executive assistant. The auburn-haired woman's smile was professional perfection. He's finishing a call with Tokyo. Can I offer you something while you wait? 10 minutes felt like hours. Every detail of the reception area spoke of intentional luxury, from the custom furniture to the precisely arranged magazines. This was the standard she aspired to reach. Mr. Cross will see you now. The double doors opened to reveal the largest office Natasha had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Manhattan like a living painting. Behind an imposing mahogany desk sat the man whose reputation preceded him like thunder. Damian Cross was more striking than any photograph could capture. Dark hair perfectly styled, piercing blue eyes that seemed to catalog every detail, and a charcoal suit that emphasized his athletic frame. When he stood, moving with fluid grace, the intensity of his presence filled the room. Miss Reynolds. His voice was cultured steel wrapped in velvet. I apologize for Patricia's absence. I hope her daughter recovers quickly. Thank you for understanding, Mr. Cross. Patricia sends her confidence that I can represent our work effectively. Natasha was surprised by her own steady tone. Please, call me Damian. I'm looking forward to this presentation, a preliminary. Sketches were quite impressive. As they moved toward the conference table by the windows, pride swelled in Natasha's chest. Her work had caught Damian Cross's attention. She began arranging her materials, acutely aware of his presence beside her. He carried the subtle scent of expensive cologne mixed with something distinctly masculine that made her pulse quicken. The Harmony Heights project represents a new vision for luxury living, she began, confidence growing as she entered her element. We've designed spaces that don't just house people but inspire them to live their best lives. She reached for her portfolio to retrieve the main floor plans, but somehow her skirt caught on the leather chair's edge. The fabric pulled taut, riding up significantly higher than intended. For a moment that stretched into eternity, more of her legs were visible than would ever be appropriate in a business meeting. Heat flooded Natasha's cheeks as she quickly tugged the skirt back into place, but not before she noticed Damian's gaze linger on her exposed skin. When their eyes met, something had shifted. There was a spark of interest that went far beyond professional curiosity. "I apologize," she stammered. Damian shook his head, a slight smile transforming his entire face. "Please don't give it another thought. These things happen. Your presentation is what matters here." But something fundamental had changed between them. The air crackled with new energy, and Natasha found herself acutely aware of every movement, every shared glance. The professional meeting had become something else entirely, though neither dared acknowledge it yet. The morning had begun with a crisis call. Now, as she prepared to share months of passionate work with one of the country's most powerful men, Natasha sensed her life balanced on the edge of transformation. The accidental moment had opened a door she hadn't even known existed. The tension in the room was palpable as Natasha forced herself to focus on the architectural drawings spread before them. Her fingers traced the layout of the master suite, professional instincts overriding the electric awareness of Damian's proximity. Each master suite features his and hers walk-in closets with custom organization systems. She explained, her voice steadying as she immersed herself in the work she loved. The bathrooms include rainfall, showers, and soaking tubs positioned to capture natural light throughout the day. Damian leaned closer to examine the details, and Natasha's breath caught as his shoulder brushed against hers. The contact was brief, accidental, yet it sent heat racing through her veins. "This is extraordinary work," he said quietly, his voice dropping to an intimate register. "You've thought of everything. Tell me, how long have you been designing?" The question was simple, but something in his tone invited honesty. "Was a child, really? I used to rearrange my bedroom furniture constantly, driving my mother crazy." She found herself sharing more than intended. "But professionally, I've been with Patricia's firm for 3 years. Before that, I worked my way through design school, taking whatever jobs I could find. My mother is a nurse, and she sacrificed everything to help me pursue this dream." Her voice caught slightly on the last words. "This project means everything to me." Something in her tone must have reached him because Damian's expression softened, the business mask slipping to reveal genuine interest. "Your passion shows in every line of these drawings. This isn't just a job for you, is it?" "No," Natasha admitted, meeting his intense gaze. "Each space I design is like creating a stage where people will live out their most important moments. Their first morning in a new home, quiet evenings with family, celebrations with friends. I want those moments to be beautiful." They spent the next hour exploring every aspect of the design. Damian asked thoughtful questions that revealed he wasn't simply a businessman calculating profit margins, but someone who genuinely understood and appreciated exceptional design. As they talked, the formal barriers between client and designer began dissolving. The sustainable materials were sourced from artisans around the world, Natasha explained, pointing to fabric samples. "This silk is hand-woven in Thailand, and these tiles are crafted by a family workshop in Morocco that's been operating for 5 generations. "You visited these places yourself?" Damian asked, impressed. "I saved for 2 years to make those trips. Patricia thought I was crazy, spending my vacation money on research. But I needed to understand the stories behind the materials. Every element in these spaces has meaning." Damian studied her face as she spoke, and Natasha felt exposed under his scrutiny. There was an intensity to his attention that made her feel simultaneously vulnerable and powerful. "I have a confession to make," Damian said as Natasha began packing up her materials. "I've been following your work for a while. A boutique hotel you designed in Soho last year caught my attention. The way you used natural materials to create warmth in such a modern space was brilliant." Natasha looked up in surprise, a flush of pride warming her chest. You know about the Meridian Hotel? I make it my business to know about talented people. In industries that interest me, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Which brings me to a proposition. I'd like to discuss expanding our professional relationship beyond just this project. But I think such a conversation deserves a more relaxed setting. The air between them seemed to thicken. Would you join me for dinner tonight? Invitation? Hung in the space between them, like a bridge she could either cross or burn. Natasha knew she should maintain professional boundaries, should politely decline and keep their relationship strictly business. But there was something in Damian's eyes that made her heart race, something that promised this dinner would be about much more than contracts and floor plans. I would like that very much, she heard herself saying. Damian's smile was radiant, transforming his face from powerful businessman to something younger, more approachable. Excellent. I know a place with a view that does justice to the city's beauty. Shall I send a car for you at 7? As Natasha left the Cross Enterprises building, she felt as though she was walking on air. The most important presentation of her career had been successful, but more than that, she sensed her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The afternoon sun painted the city in golden hues as she made her way back to Brooklyn. Her phone buzzed with a text. From Helena Martinez, her best friend and fashion consultant. How did it go? Need emergency outfit consultation for tonight? Natasha smiled, typing back quickly. Dinner at 7. Help. What had started as a professional crisis that morning had evolved into something she couldn't quite name. The accidental wardrobe malfunction had led to an unexpected connection, and now she was preparing for an evening that could reshape her entire future. But as the subway carried her home, a small voice whispered warnings. Men like Damian Cross didn't date women like her. They collected beautiful things, used them, and moved on. Was she walking into an opportunity or a trap? The question would have to wait. Tonight, she would discover which side of the line she was willing to cross. The midnight blue dress clung to Natasha's curves like liquid silk, a purchase Helena had insisted upon months ago that had never seen daylight until tonight. Standing before her bathroom mirror, she barely recognized herself. Helena had worked. Magic with makeup and styling, transforming her from Brooklyn designer to Manhattan sophisticate. You look absolutely stunning, Helena said, applying the final touch of lipstick. But remember to breathe. This might be framed as business, but that man is definitely interested in more than your design skills. Helena, please, can't think about this as anything other than a professional dinner, or I'll completely lose my nerve. But even as she spoke the words, Natasha's pulse quickened with anticipation. The way Damian had looked at her, subtle shift in his voice when he'd asked her to dinner, suggested this evening would be anything but professional. The driver, who arrived at exactly 7 o'clock, was impeccably dressed and courteous.
Good.
Evening, Miss Reynolds. Mr. Cross is waiting for you at Celestial. I hope you don't mind the drive. It's about 20 minutes to the restaurant. Celestial occupied the 30th floor of a gleaming tower on the Upper East Side. As the elevator carried them upward, Natasha tried to calm her nerves by focusing on the city lights visible through the glass walls. Each floor that passed felt like another step away from her normal life. The restaurant was breathtaking. Floor 2 ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan's skyline, while the interior was decorated in warm golds and deep blues. That made the space feel intimate despite its grandeur. Soft jazz music drifted through the air, and candlelight flickered on each table. Damian was waiting at a corner table that commanded the most spectacular view. When he stood as she approached, Natasha's breath caught in her throat. He had changed from his business suit into a perfectly tailored black jacket over a white shirt open at the collar. The casual elegance suited him perfectly, making him seem more approachable while somehow even more attractive. Natasha, he said, taking her hand and kissing it gently. The old-fashioned gesture sent shivers up her arm. You look absolutely radiant. Q. This place is incredible. She gestured toward the view as he pulled out her chair. I feel like I'm floating above the city. That was the idea. I wanted somewhere that matched the beauty of your designs. A place where art and reality blend together. He settled into his seat across from her, his blue eyes never leaving her face. I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of ordering wine. The sommelier here is exceptional. A server appeared with a bottle that probably cost more than Natasha's monthly rent. As the wine was poured, she marveled at how surreal the evening felt. 12 hours ago, she'd been sleeping in her tiny Brooklyn apartment. Now she was dining with one of the city's most powerful men in a restaurant that existed in the clouds. "Tell me about yourself," Damian said once they were alone. "Beyond the impressive resume and passionate presentations, what drives Natasha Reynolds when she's not changing the world through interior design?" The question was deceptively simple, but she sensed he genuinely wanted to know. "I read obsessively. Art history, philosophy, poetry. I collect vintage postcards from flea markets. And I volunteer at a shelter for women transitioning out of homelessness, helping them create beautiful spaces in their new apartments. Volunteer. Work isn't something I expected. My mother raised me to understand that talent is a responsibility, not just a gift. If I can help someone feel dignity and hope through design, then I'm honoring what I've been given." Damian studied her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect? Someone hungry for success at any cost? Someone who would see tonight as an opportunity to advance their career through whatever means necessary." His voice carried a note of cynicism that surprised her. "Is that what most people do?" "In my experience, yes. Everyone wants something from me. Money, connections, access to my world. It becomes difficult to trust anyone's motivations." Admission revealed a loneliness that Natasha hadn't expected. Behind the powerful facade was a man who'd learned to view every relationship as transactional. "That must be incredibly isolating," she said softly. "It is." His eyes met hers, which is why tonight feels like such a rare gift. "You're here because you want to be, not because you need something from me." But even as he spoke the words, Natasha felt a stab of guilt. Wasn't she here because he could advance her career? Wasn't there some part of her that hoped this evening would lead to opportunities she couldn't achieve on her own? Their conversation flowed as smoothly as the wine. Damian was brilliant, well-traveled, and surprisingly funny. He told stories of failed business ventures in his early 20s, moments of doubt that had nearly derailed his empire, and his complex relationship with success. "Most people assume having money solves all problems," he said as their main courses arrived, but it creates different ones. How do you know if someone loves you or your bank account? How do you maintain relationships when everyone sees you as a symbol rather than a person? Is that why you've never married? The question slipped out before Natasha could stop herself. Damian's smile was rueful. "Among other reasons, I've had relationships, but they've all eventually crumbled under the weight of expectations. Mine and theirs." The evening deepened around them, the city lights below twinkling like earthbound stars. Natasha found herself sharing stories she rarely told. Childhood dreams of transforming ugly spaces into beautiful ones, the day she'd decided to move to New York with nothing but talent and stubborn determination. "You're remarkable," Damian said as dessert was served. "In a world of calculated ambition, you've managed to maintain genuine passion for your work." "Don't romanticize me," Natasha replied, surprising herself with her directness. "I want success as much as anyone. I want to build something lasting, something that matters. The difference is, I'm not willing to sacrifice my soul to get it. And if I told you I could guarantee your success, that I could open doors that would take you decades to open on your own." The question hung between them like a challenge. "What would you want in return?" Damian's gaze intensified. "Your time, your attention, your company." Implications were clear, though unspoken. He was offering her the world, but the price would be herself. It was a bargain people made every day in this city, trading pieces of their authenticity for access to power. "That's quite an offer," she said carefully. "It's an honest one. Your work, your passion, your refusal to compromise your values, I'd like to get to know you better." The evening had reached its crucial moment. She could accept his offer and step into a world of unlimited opportunity, or she could maintain her independence and return to her uncertain but authentic life. As she looked into Damian's eyes, Natasha realized the choice would define not just her career, but the woman she would become. 3 months later, Natasha's life had transformed beyond recognition. The penthouse apartment Damian had provided overlooked Central Park, its floor-tisseling windows offering views that still took her breath away each morning. Designer clothes filled a walk-in closet larger than her previous bedroom. Her bank account reflected a salary increase that made her old financial struggles seem like distant memories. Yet as she stood in the marble bathroom of her gilded cage, applying makeup for another charity gala, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was slowly disappearing. "Look perfect," Damian said, appearing in the doorway wearing a tuxedo that emphasized his commanding presence. "Though you always do." He moved behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders as he met her eyes in the mirror. The gesture should have been intimate, but lately his touches felt more possessive than affectionate. "The Whitmore Foundation. Dinner is crucial tonight," he continued. "Senator Richardson will be there, along with the planning committee for the new cultural center. Your presentation on sustainable luxury design could secure us the contract." Natasha nodded, though something twisted in her stomach. When had her work become us and our contracts? When had she stopped being a designer and become an extension of Damian's empire? The gala at the Metropolitan Museum was a glittering affair. Manhattan's elites circulated through galleries filled with priceless art, her conversations a carefully choreographed dance of influence and ambition. Natasha moved through the crowd on Damian's arm, smiling and charming potential clients with practiced ease. "Natasha Reynolds, what a pleasure," said Victoria Whitmore, the foundation's director. "Damian has been raving about your innovative approaches to high-end sustainable design. I believe luxury and environmental responsibility aren't mutually exclusive," Natasha replied smoothly, delivering the pitch she'd perfected over countless similar evenings. But as she spoke, she caught sight of her reflection in a nearby display. Case the woman staring back wore a designer gown that cost more than most people's monthly salary, diamond earrings on loan from Tiffany, and an expression of polished perfection that felt increasingly foreign. "Excuse me for a moment," she murmured, slipping away from the conversation. The museum's restroom provided temporary sanctuary. Natasha gripped the marble countertop, studying her reflection more critically. Her grandmother's pearl earrings had been replaced by borrowed diamonds. Her authentic passion had been refined into marketable sound bites. Even her smile felt manufactured. Her phone buzzed with a text from Helena, who had been increasingly distant since Natasha's rapid ascent into Damian's world. "Saw the society page photos. You look beautiful but different. Are you happy?" The question pierced through the evening's performative glamour. Was she happy? She had everything she'd thought she wanted: success, recognition, financial security. So why did she feel so hollow? "There you are," Damian's voice cut through her introspection. He appeared in the mirror behind her, his expression concerned. "You disappeared. Just needed a moment. The senator wants to discuss the cultural center project privately. This could be the opportunity we've been waiting for." "We," there it was again the pronoun that had gradually erased her individual identity. "Damian, can I ask you something?" She turned to face him directly. "Do you see me as a partner or an asset?" His expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "What kind of question is that? An honest one? Because lately, I feel like I'm being managed rather than loved." The word hung between them like a challenge. They'd never explicitly discussed love, though Natasha had felt it growing within her over the past months. What she'd interpreted as affection was actually evaluation. "You're being dramatic," Damian said, his tone cooling. "Everything I've done has been to elevate your career, to give you opportunities you could never have achieved alone. I never asked to be elevated. I asked to be valued." "You are valued. Look around you, Natasha. Look at what you have now: the penthouse, the clients, the recognition. I've given you a life most people only dream of. You've given me your version of my life," she replied, her voice gaining strength. "But what about my dreams? What about the woman who volunteered at shelters and saved for years to visit artisan workshops? Where is she in all this perfection?" Damian's jaw tightened. "Woman was struggling in a studio apartment with no prospects for advancement. I liberated you from that limitation. You transformed me into someone I don't recognize." The conversation was interrupted by a soft knock on the restroom door. "Miss Reynolds? Mr. Cross?
House.
Senator Richardson is asking for you." As they returned to the gala, maintaining their composed public facade, Natasha felt a fundamental shift occurring within her. The realization that had been building for weeks finally crystallized into clarity. She had become another beautiful object in Damian's collection, valuable for what she could provide rather than who she was. The passionate designer who had walked into his office 3 months ago had been gradually refined out of existence, placed by a polished asset that served his ambitions. The evening continued with practiced perfection. Natasha charmed the senator, secured expressions of interest for the cultural center project, and played her role flawlessly. But with each performance, she felt more of her authentic self slipping away. Later, in the limousine returning to the penthouse, Damian reviewed the evening's successes with satisfaction. Senator Richardson was impressed. Victoria Whitmore wants to schedule a follow-up meeting. Tonight exceeded all expectations. Natasha stared out at the city lights, seeing not opportunity but a glittering prison. The Cultural Center project? Don't be ridiculous. It's exactly the kind of high-profile commission that will establish your reputation permanently. Your reputation, you mean? Everything I do now reflects on Cross Enterprises, as it should. We're partners, Natasha. Partners share decision-making authority. I haven't had a choice in months. Damian's expression hardened.
You're being
ungrateful. Do you have any idea how many designers would kill for the opportunities I've provided? Then maybe you should find one of them. The words surprised them both. Natasha hadn't planned to issue an ultimatum, but there it was, hanging between them like a bridge burned. You don't mean that, Damian said, his voice dangerously quiet. I think I do. A limousine pulled up to the building where Natasha's gilded cage awaited. As they rode the elevator to the penthouse, in tense silence, she realized she was facing the most important decision of her life. She could continue living in luxury as Damian's beautiful possession, or she could reclaim her identity and return to uncertainty. The choice would define not only her career, but her soul. The penthouse felt suffocating as Natasha moved through its perfected spaces, packing her personal belongings into the same battered suitcase she'd brought to New York years ago. Dawn was breaking over Central Park, painting the sky in shades, a possibility that matched her newfound resolve. You're really going to throw all this away? Damian's voice carried a mixture of disbelief and cold fury. He stood in the doorway of the bedroom, still wearing his tuxedo from the previous night, looking every inch the powerful man who wasn't accustomed to being defied. I'm not throwing anything away, Natasha replied, carefully wrapping her grandmother's pearl earrings in tissue paper. She'd retrieved them from the jewelry box where they'd been displaced by borrowed diamonds. I'm reclaiming what I lost. What you lost. His laugh was bitter. You were nobody when I found you. Struggling designer in a cramped apartment, working for a small firm that nobody had heard of. I made you somebody. You made me into your version of somebody, she corrected, meeting his gaze steadily. But that somebody wasn't me. Damian moved closer, his expression shifting from anger to calculated charm. It was a look she'd seen him use in business negotiations, the prelude to offering exactly what his opponent thought they wanted. If this is about creative control, we can negotiate new terms. You can have more input into project selection, more autonomy in your designs. It's not about terms, Damian. It's about authenticity. Authenticity doesn't pay bills or build careers. Maybe not, but it lets me sleep at night knowing I haven't sold pieces of my soul for success. The words seemed to hit him like a physical blow. For a moment, his carefully constructed facade cracked, revealing something vulnerable beneath. I thought you cared about me, he said quietly. I did care about you. I still do. Natasha's voice softened with genuine emotion. But caring about someone doesn't mean disappearing into their vision of who you should be. You fell in love with my passion and authenticity, then systematically worked to eliminate both. I was protecting you. This industry will eat you alive if you're not careful, so you decided to eat me first. The question hung in the air as Natasha continued packing. She folded the midnight blue dress, the one Helena had convinced her to buy, the one that had started this whole journey. It felt like a costume now, beautiful but foreign. Where will you go? Damian asked, his tone shifting to something approaching. defeat, back to Brooklyn, back to Patricia's firm if she'll have me. Back to the life I was building before I let fear of limitation seduce me into this gilded cage. Patricia's firm will never give you the exposure you had with me. You'll be designing hotel lobbies instead of cultural centers. Maybe, but they'll be my hotel lobbies, designed according to my vision, not market research and focus groups. Zipped the suitcase closed and turned to face him fully. In the morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Damian looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than the powerful figure who had swept her off her feet. "I'm not sorry it happened," she said truthfully. "These months taught me things about myself that I needed to learn. I'm also not sorry it's ending. And if I said I loved you, if I promised things would be different." The question pierced her heart because she could see he meant it in his way. But she'd learned the difference between loving someone and loving the idea of possessing them. I'd say that love shouldn't require someone to become a different person to deserve it. Damian's expression hardened again, the vulnerability disappearing behind his corporate mask. "You'll regret this decision. Success doesn't come twice to people who walk away from it. Then I guess I'll find out what matters more. Success or self-respect?" The elevator ride down felt like descending from a cloud back to earth. In the lobby, the same doorman who had greeted her with increasing deference over the past months looked surprised to see her leaving with luggage. "Taxi, Miss Reynolds? Subway, actually. Thank you." The morning commute to Brooklyn felt like traveling backward through time. The familiar rhythm of the train, the working-class passengers heading to jobs that paid bills rather than built empires, the gradual transition from Manhattan's gleaming towers to Brooklyn's more human-scaled neighborhoods, all of it felt like coming home. Patricia's face cycled through surprise, concern, and finally, understanding as Natasha sat in the small office that now seemed impossibly cozy after months in corporate towers. "So you walked away from Damian Cross and the biggest opportunity in interior design history," Patricia summarized after hearing the story. "I walked toward myself," Natasha corrected. "And you want your old job back, if you'll have me?" "I let success go to my head. I know I probably hurt people with my sudden departure." Patricia studied her for a long moment. "You look different. Not just the expensive clothes, though we should probably talk about your wardrobe. You look more sure of yourself somehow. I learned the difference between confidence and costume, between being valued and being valuable. Emma's recovery went well, by the way. She asks about you sometimes." The mention of Patricia's daughter brought tears to Natasha's eyes. She'd missed so much of real life while living in her penthouse fantasy. "There's something else," Patricia continued. "While you were conquering Manhattan, I was approached by a non-profit organization. They're renovating buildings to create transitional housing for women leaving homelessness. The pay is terrible, the timeline is impossible, and the budget is practically non-existent." "It sounds perfect," Patricia smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that. They specifically requested you after seeing your work at the Meridian Hotel. Apparently, authentic passion is harder to fake than I thought." 6 months later, Natasha stood in the completed common room of Haven House, watching the first residents move into spaces designed with every technique she'd learned and every ounce of love she possessed. The furniture was second-hand but carefully chosen, the lighting was creative rather than expensive, and the overall effect was one of dignity and hope. "It's beautiful," said Maria Santos, a 34-year-old mother of two who would be among the first to call Haven House home. "I never thought I'd live somewhere this beautiful again." Natasha felt tears prick her eyes. This was the moment she'd been seeking without knowing it, the connection between her skills and someone else's transformation. It's not the polite approval of wealthy clients, but the genuine gratitude of someone whose life had been touched by thoughtful design. Her phone buzzed with a text from Helena, who had eagerly welcomed her back to authenticity. "Coffee later? I want to hear about the new project." As Natasha typed her response, she caught her reflection in the window. She wore her own clothes, her grandmother's pearl earrings, and an expression of satisfaction that no borrowed diamonds could match. The woman looking back at her was someone she recognized, someone she respected. The afternoon sun streamed through windows she'd positioned to capture the best light, illuminating spaces designed not for magazine covers but for healing. She'd given up the penthouse, the designer wardrobe, and the access to unlimited resources in return. She'd reclaimed her soul. 2 years passed like pages turning in a book. She was finally writing herself. Haven House had become a model for similar projects across the city. And Natasha's reputation grew organically through word of mouth, rather than calculated networking. She'd learned to measure success not in square footage or budget size, but in the number of lives her designs had touched. The knock on her Brooklyn apartment door came on a Tuesday evening in October. Natasha had been sketching plans for a community center in Queens. Her small dining table covered with fabric samples and lighting catalogs. When the familiar rhythm interrupted her work, she opened the door to find Damian Cross standing in her hallway, looking oddly out of place in the modest building. He wore a simple black coat over dark jeans, his usual corporate armor replaced by something approaching vulnerability. "Hello, Natasha." Her heart performed a familiar flutter muscle memory of attraction that time hadn't entirely erased. But the overwhelming need she'd once felt was gone, replaced by something calmer and more grounded. Double quotes, Damian, this is unexpected. "I come in?" She stepped aside, watching as he took in her restored life. The apartment was larger than her original studio, but still modest by his standards. Her designs covered the walls again, but now they included photographs of completed projects, thank you letters from clients, and sketches of dreams still taking shape. "You look good," he said, and she heard genuine surprise in his voice. "Happy I am." He moved to the window that overlooked her small courtyard garden, a luxury she'd created by choosing a ground-floor apartment. "I've been following your work. Haven House, the community center project, the affordable housing initiative in Queens. It's impressive." "Thank you. I also heard you turned down the Morrison Hotel contract. That would have been a significant commission." Natasha joined him at the window, remembering the luxury hotel chain that had offered her a contract. It's worth more money than she'd see in 5 years of nonprofit work. "They wanted me to replicate a design template across 12 properties. That's not design, it's manufacturing. Still principled, I see. Still authentic." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the evening light fade over Brooklyn. Tension that had once crackled between them had evolved into something gentler, understanding born of shared history and separate growth. "I owe you an apology," Damian said finally. "I treated you like an acquisition rather than a person. I was so focused on what you could become that I never appreciated who you were." We both learned something from the experience. "What did you learn?" Natasha considered the question carefully. That success without authenticity is just elaborate failure. That the right life for someone else might be the wrong life for me. That love, real love, doesn't ask you to disappear. "And I learned," Damian said quietly, "having everything means nothing if you can't share it with someone who chose to be there." He turned from the window to face her. "I've been in therapy for the past year, trying to understand why I've been so afraid of genuine connection that I kept trying to control it instead." The admission surprised her. The Damian Cross she'd known would never have acknowledged needing help, much less seeking it. "Glad," she said sincerely. "That takes courage. I wanted you to know that meeting you changed me, not immediately, and not in the way I expected, but fundamentally. You showed me the difference between being powerful and being whole." "Damian, ... I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I'm not here to try to win you back or convince you to reconsider. I just wanted you to know that you were right to leave. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand why." The conversation felt like the closing of a circle that had been left incomplete. They'd both needed to become different people before they could have this honest exchange. "There's something else," Damian continued. "I'm starting a foundation. Funding design projects for underserved communities, supporting architects and designers who prioritize social impact over profit margins. I'd like you to be the first recipient of a grant. I don't need your money, Damian. It's not my money anymore. It's the foundation's money, administered by a board I don't control. I've deliberately removed myself from the decision-making process. To avoid conflicts of interest." He smiled ruefully. "My therapist was very clear about the importance of that boundary." Despite herself, Natasha felt intrigued. "What kind of projects? Whatever you think would make the biggest difference. Schools, community centers, transitional housing, health clinics, places where good design can improve lives rather than just impress clients. It was exactly the kind of opportunity she'd dreamed of, the chance to scale her impact without compromising her values. But accepting would mean maintaining some connection to Damian, and she wasn't sure if that was wise. "Think about it," he said, reading her hesitation. "There's no deadline, no strings attached. If you're interested, the Foundation's contact information is public record." He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Both in leaving and in building this life, you're doing exactly what you were meant to do." After he left, Natasha sat in her kitchen, processing the unexpected encounter. The man who had visited her wasn't the controlling figure she'd fled from 2 years ago. This version of Damian seemed genuinely interested in supporting her work rather than directing it. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Helena's name appeared on the screen. "Please tell me you didn't let that man back into your life," her friend said without preamble. "How did you know he was here? I saw him leaving your building. Please tell me you're not considering whatever he offered. He offered funding for community design projects." "No strings attached." "Natasha, honey, there are always strings. Maybe not visible ones, but they're there. Maybe, but what if they're not? What if he's genuinely changed? Then he can prove it by supporting your work from a distance and never darkening your doorstep again." Helena's protectiveness was touching, but Natasha found herself genuinely curious about Damian's foundation. Over the following weeks, she researched the organization discreetly. The board of directors included respected figures in urban planning and social justice. The mission statement emphasized community input and designer autonomy. Most tellingly, Damian's name appeared nowhere in the operational structure. The first grant application she submitted was for a project close to her heart: renovating a community center in the Bronx that served as an after-school haven for children. In a neighborhood with few safe spaces, response came within 2 weeks, not from Damian, but from the Foundation's program director, a woman whose credentials in nonprofit management were impeccable. The project was approved with full funding, and no restrictions on her creative vision. Standing in the gutted community center 6 months later, watching volunteers paint murals designed by the children who would use the space, Natasha felt a deep sense of completion. She'd found a way to do meaningful work on a larger scale without sacrificing her authenticity or independence. Miss Natasha called 8-year-old Sophia, one of the center's regular attendees. "Do you really think it's going to be as beautiful as the picture?" Natasha knelt beside the girl, looking at the architectural rendering that showed the completed space. Bright colors, flexible furniture, reading nooks that invited quiet contemplation, and activity areas that encouraged creative play. "I think it's going to be even more beautiful," she said, "because it's going to be filled with all of you." As the sun set over the Bronx, painting the construction site in warm golden light, Natasha felt the deep satisfaction that came from work aligned with values. She'd learned that true success wasn't measured in penthouse views or designer wardrobes, but in the number of lives made better by the gifts she'd been given. The woman who had walked into Damian Cross's office 3 years ago seeking validation had been replaced by someone who found validation in her work itself. She'd discovered that the most beautiful spaces weren't always the most expensive ones, but the ones designed with love and filled with purpose. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maria Santos, who had moved from Haven House into permanent housing and was now studying to become a social worker herself. "Saw the article about your community center project? Thank you for showing me that beautiful spaces are possible for everyone." Natasha smiled, tucking the phone back into her pocket. She had everything she needed: a career that mattered, relationships that nourished her soul, and the hard-won knowledge that she was exactly where she belonged. The accidental encounter that had launched her into Damian's world had ultimately led her home, to herself. Sometimes the most important journeys were circular, taking you far from where you started only to help you appreciate what you'd had all along. As she locked up the community center and headed home to Brooklyn, Natasha carried with her the quiet confidence of a woman who had learned the difference between being valued and being valuable, between success and significance, between having everything and having enough. The end asterisk, like this video, if the story touched your heart. Subscribe for more emotional tales, and share with someone who believes in the power of true love. And let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.